Item 10.3 on the agenda is the National General Assembly of Local Government 2021. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Tyson.
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Adams. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Nothing really to add, Deputy Mayor, except that this is the more formal component of what councillors were speaking about in presentations, and there's some more detailed information as well.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak to the motion?
Nothing further to add. I think we spoke extensively through the presentations around the ALGA trip. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Byrne?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to move an amendment, please. I'm just pulling it up. Apologies. I would like to move an extra dot point below the current officer's recommendation to read, ensures that any advocacy that Moonee Valley does between now and endorsing a strategy includes, and in brackets, but is not limited to, close brackets, a North-West Melbourne soccer hub and a Moonee Valley highball stadium.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I'll just confirm that governance have the wording for that motion.
Just sent it to them via email and to councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. All right. With all being clear on the motion, the amendment, sorry, in front of us, can I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will. Look, one of the dot points in the attachment was that councillors are encouraged to review and update the advocacy strategy to capitalise on the upcoming federal election. And I think we have a big bit of work ahead of us to ensure that we have an endorsed advocacy plan going forward. It would have been really nice if the federal election wasn't sort of so close to a new term of council, but timing is what it is. We're working through it and we need to ensure that we have the appropriate community consultation through a full advocacy plan. We obviously had a 2018 to 2022 one, but we are in the process of refreshing it. But the reason why I have put forward this one is we have received two massive petitions from both the basketball and netball community and the soccer community in regards to infrastructure that is extremely expensive, that the community really wants, and it is something that we've spoken at length about. And I think it's just that reassuring part to say, yes, we are pushing for these particular things. I've made sure I've included but not limited to, because I think that that's also a really important thing. We're going to be advocating for various things, and I don't want this to obviously turn into a debate where we're adding things in and pulling things out. That wasn't the intention of moving by putting in this extra dot point. It's just for the 3,000 or so people that signed each petition, it's just that little bit of a reassurance that, yes, we are speaking to people at that federal level and the state level in regards to what we know that our community desperately wants and needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Not a lot more to add other than echoing Councillor Byrne's comments that there has been significant demand requests from large parts of our community for these facilities. So I think in fairness to them, it's something that we should be advocating for in our federal advocacy strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment before us? Councillor Tyson?
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor, and I appreciate Councillor Byrne's thoughts on this item. I do think, in a matter of relevance, that the amendment isn't relevant to the report. And I mean, I think there's at least 7 months away till a federal election. So I'm sure that any sort of advocacy strategy can be formulated by then. And I'm sure both of those items would be in that. So I think I would just note that, and that I probably won't support this motion just because it's not relevant to the report. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Tyson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Isa.
Look, at the outset, I absolutely support advocacy for a soccer hub and advocacy for highball. They're things that I know that people are crying out for in Moonee Valley, and I absolutely support them being part of our council plan, our 4-year vision, our four-year capital works, our large advocacy strategy. I think, though, that this amendment to the motion is really unfair on councillors and unfair on the community, because this is not the place to be pitting councillors against each other or to be trying to put forward particular projects and leave some others out. We have had thousands of people sign petitions on climate. We've had a number of petitions about other sports as well. We are working very hard in the background on our council plan. We've had thousands of residents engage in our council planning, and in our we're working very hard also on a comprehensive advocacy strategy, and councillors are talking about that at length. So to be absolutely clear, I support these two infrastructure builds. I think that actually council's probably going to have to fund the highball itself. We're probably not going to get much support from state or federal on that. The soccer hub, we're perhaps more likely to get some federal or state money to support that, and I would welcome that. But I don't think this is the place to isolate two of our very, very many concerns across our municipality and to put those forward without all of the community engagement and the well-documented engagement processes and consultation that are part of our other community vision, community plan, and our community advocacy strategy that will be coming to us later this year. So I'm afraid I won't be supporting this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I won't mince my words. I'm not going to pretend to support something and then not back it up with my vote. I think what Councillor Byrne has put up about basketball and soccer is quite relevant. We have had numerous conversations about soccer. We've had so many questions given to us before council meetings about soccer and about basketball all the time. Even tonight, we got asked about soccer. So, we were going to put down new grass down at Strathnova Reserve, but we've ripped that out of the budget. And now is our opportunity to try and bring it back in and hopefully get that ground fixed up. So, Madam Mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor, I will be supporting this. I'm not mincing my words.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think it's important to note that these two items are absolutely going to, I think, end up in our advocacy, regardless of the outcome of whether this amendment falls or not. So just wanted to say that. Thanks. Thank
you, Councillor Adams. I believe everyone has spoken to the current amendment. So, Councillor Byrne, your right of reply.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you to all the councillors that spoke. I will touch on, firstly, to Councillor Bedio and Councillor Sypek, thank you very much for your encouraging words. I know that we've had plenty of conversations, as all councillors have, with lots of residents within the municipality. Touching on what Councillor Tyson said, being not relevant to the report, at the end of the day, we probably spent, and I don't know the number because it wasn't in the report, but potentially 30 grand on councillors going up to Canberra without an advocacy, without any sort of endorsed advocacy. And this is ensuring that we have something. We have a dot point. We actually have a council resolution to say, you know what, if we're having these particular meetings, we will bring these things up. We're ensuring to the community that yes, we will. In terms of Councillor Isa, in terms of what you said, saying that we're going through a big consultation piece at the moment, I completely understand that we are. It is a massive piece, and I'd like to thank everyone who has contributed to the consultation that is going on at the moment. But the simple fact of the matter is that it is not completed at the moment. So we don't have anything. The only thing that we have to work with at the moment is the things that we know as councillors, as representatives of our community, what we need to advocate for. And as Councillor Sypek said before, we need to back up what we're actually talking about. If we've come out and we're saying that we're supportive of a massive soccer hub and we're supportive of a highball stadium, we need to put up our hands in the chamber and actually show the community how serious we are about these things. All the fluff that's going on in the background, I'm over it. I'm here for action, and that's why I move this and put in this extra dot point to this motion. So that's all, Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I'll now put that to the vote. So we're voting on Councillor Byrne's amendment. All those in favour? Councillor Bedio, Councillor Adams, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Sypek, and those against? Councillor Tyson, Councillor Isa. That motion is carried. And that amendment now forms the substantive motion in front of us. So to recap, we'd had that motion moved by Councillor Tyson, seconded Councillor Adams. Councillor Byrne, you had the call. Would you like to speak to the substantive motion? Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to the substantive motion?
No, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Isa.
I'd like to move an amendment, if I may, Deputy Mayor. Could I call an adjournment to, or do you want me to move the amendment and then call the adjournment to get it in writing? Is that the best process?
Maybe we could just, I can call an adjournment so that we can get time to draft wording for an amendment. So we'll just adjourn the meeting. Apologies for those tuned in at home. We'll be back shortly, a 5 to 10 minute adjournment. Welcome back. We're just returning from an adjournment of our ordinary council meeting, and we are in item 10.3 discussing the National General Assembly of Local Government 2021. We had adjourned to work on wording of an amendment, and Councillor Isa, you had the floor.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment to the existing motion that says that Council hold a council meeting the afternoon of Friday the 30th of July 2021 to discuss an interim advocacy strategy to add to the items already mentioned in the point above.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Do I have a seconder, councillors, for the motion? In the absence of a seconder, councillors, I can't accept that motion onto the floor. Councillor Isa, you have the floor. Would you like to speak to the motion?
In which case I'll move a further amendment, if I may, Deputy Mayor. I'll move an amendment, so I just need to see the wording of the existing. So I'll move an amendment to add to the point, I don't know if it's labelled point B, but to the point that says, but it's not limited to, a North-West Melbourne soccer hub and a Moonee Valley highball stadium and beautifying Moonee Ponds Creek, and action on climate change, such as a community battery, and a headspace clinic for Moonee Valley, and support for public housing, and local sports field lighting package.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I might give you a moment and for governance to Councillor Isa, I'm not sure if you're able to type that into the chat.
I can try. Sorry, I've got three screens open, and
Councillor, if you'd like to read it out again, I'll try and capture that in the chat.
So, and a Moonee Valley highball stadium and beautifying Moonee Ponds Creek, and action on climate change, such as a community battery, and a headspace clinic for Moonee Valley.
Sorry, and action on climate change,
such as a community battery, and a headspace clinic for Moonee Valley, and support for public housing residents, and local sports field lighting package.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. And governance has managed to capture that wording as well. Thank you. Probably with better spelling than mine. Councillors, do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillors? In the absence of a seconder, the motion lapses. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor, can we put it to the vote, please?
Councillor Sypek, Councillor Isa has the call at the moment and has her time to speak.
So, okay, Councillor Sypek's moved a procedural motion. If he has a seconder, that's allowed. I do have the call at the moment, but
thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Sypek, your procedural motion is to put the motion. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Sypek's procedural motion? Thank you, councillors. In the absence of a seconder, the motion lapses. Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. So I'm speaking to the substantive motion at the moment, is my understanding. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the time is not on, but I know that it doesn't matter. Just wrap me up when. So a couple of things that concern me about tonight. Firstly, we're 2 councillors down, so we don't have our mayor and we don't have Councillor Sharp, and they haven't had an opportunity to contribute to what else might be included in an interim advocacy. We know that an advocacy strategy is going to be developed by council and rigorously thought through and matched to our council plan that members of our community are contributing to. So at the moment, we've sort of got these 2 items existing as an interim advocacy strategy. Obviously, and while I've been really clear, and I know a comment was made by another councillor that somehow this was not clear, I am really clear that I support council building a highball stadium, but actually what I support is council funding it ourselves. I don't think we're going to get money from federal or state, and significant money, to do that. My view is that we need to build into our capital works projects and our capital works expenditure council building a highball stadium. What we're talking about here is just what we're advocating for state and federal governments. And an advocacy strategy is vastly different to a council plan. An advocacy strategy is not what we want to achieve for our community in the next 4 years. An advocacy strategy is what we want to pitch to state and federal government that we might think fits into their election agenda. It's actually much more politically nuanced than just what we think what we know our community wants. We know our community wants a highball stadium. We have to be building that ourselves and not relying on this advocacy strategy. We know that our community wants a soccer hub, and I do think there's some scope for some federal or state money on that, so I absolutely support that. But an advocacy strategy is not something that comes up through a dot point in a report on the floor in this way when we're down 2 councillors. An advocacy strategy has to be smart, it has to be politically savvy, it has to reflect what we're likely to match in terms of what our state and federal leaders are telling us that they might be able to support. And it has to be an inclusive strategy that reflects a diverse and inclusive breadth of our community. And we're 2 councillors down, and we cannot be assured that we've covered everything off. I put forward a number of different actions, and obviously there wasn't even a seconder for that. So, you know, that's pretty disappointing too.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to the substantive motion? No. Councillor Byrne, as the mover of the amendment, would you like a right of reply?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just briefly, obviously this is, turned out to be a little bit more contentious than what I would have thought. These are just 2 things that I know have a lot of community support. I specifically put in there to ensure that it's not limited to only these 2 things. There were obviously various things that people went up to Canberra for to pitch, and they could have come from anywhere. I just wanted to ensure to the community that at least these 2 things will be discussed going forward. In terms of me not supporting a longer list, once there's appropriate discussions, typically at council we would have a briefing to be able to discuss things, to be able to work through things, and then be able to debate things out in the chamber. The idea of putting heaps of pressure on other councillors to come in on a Friday afternoon without having a report or not really knowing where it's going, it really didn't seem fair or fitting. At the end of the day, there's been a long time where it could have come up through a notice of motion to work on the advocacy strategy earlier. And personally, I regret not ensuring that before going to Canberra, we had an endorsed strategy, or at least had specific points that we could advocate for. That's something that I regretted not doing before the Canberra trip, even though I didn't go to the Canberra trip. And I was ensuring that at this opportunity, or the first time that I thought about it, that I put something in. And as I said before, I thank the councillors for supporting it. It's not meant to be an extensive list. It was 2 things that we've had so much community feedback on, not saying that other things haven't as well, but I would say that if you were to mention Moonee Valley, these 2 things have come up a lot. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Tyson, as the mover of the original motion, would you like a right of reply?
Nothing to add.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors.